just out there, and can go. Now ain't just me about me. Hey, I'm sick of my food. This is my birthday. We're still tall.
You can blame it on Hoboken, but baby stay with blame it on Hoboken. But baby stay with blame it, but don't tame it. Brighter names and flame with it. No 2 days the same on it. Stake your claim to fame on it. Blame it on Hoboken, but baby stay with me. For those of you who are new to Blame It in Hoboken, a little summary of our plot thus far. Carolyn Cates, who is a tour guide specializing in overlooked landmarks, has decided to use an ancient math formula to find love on a deadline. She's on a rebound, and she's found her old high school yearbook in her closet. She's found a math formula in the yearbook, and it says that a prime and a square can lead to a perfect number. She's 31. She figures love is the perfect number. All she needs is a square. So she sets off to find the most perfect square man in Manhattan. In the process of doing this, while researching a Hoboken-based Sinatra landmark, she meets a very pushy matchmaker named Jimmy Foss. He has an unbelievable ability to shove people into each other on a crowded dance floor. They'll spill drinks on each other and then miraculously fall in love. When she enlists him, it's a bit of an unusual hiring, as she seems to be the only person who could see him. But Jimmy actually turns up the most normal man in New York. His name is Ned Allen, and tells Carolyn that if she takes these 5 steps to love with Ned, she will in fact be truly in love by her 32nd birthday, which is quickly approaching. Carolyn and Ned have gone on their first date. It's gone very well. And now we are back with Carolyn talking to Jimmy in episode 4 of Blame It on Hoboken. Jimmy Foss phoned as Carolyn was walking through the door of her apartment.
So, Toots, how'd it go?
He asked, skipping over hello, and Carolyn recounted her date with Ned.
Oh, nice work, Toots. You've taken the first next step to love, but here's the thing. What you do next for step 2 is crucial. Meet me in Hoboken tonight at 8 and we'll plan your next move. Don't be late. We have a lot of work to do if we want to get this right.
Are we going to the Friends of Frank's? Carolyn asked Jimmy as she stepped off the ferry onto the landing in Hoboken. They were heading back to Frank Sinatra Drive.
Not tonight, Toots. Tonight, I'm taking you on a little tour through my home turf.
They walked past a butcher shop and a florist and a series of small homes with postage-stamped lawns with ceramic ornaments. Carolyn noticed a duck, a stork, and a saint or two. And then they stopped at a narrow 6-story apartment building. Jimmy Foss opened the door and led her up the flights of stairs to the top floor of the building.
I bought my place a few years ago when prices were low. Sure, it's a walk up, but I get a lot of living space for my dollar, not to mention the cardiovascular benefits. I'm on the right.
Jimmy said as they reached the top floor. A large vase of fresh flowers were sitting on the doorstep of the apartment across the hall, Carolyn noticed.
Well, well, well.
A silver-haired woman dressed in a pink tracksuit bounded to the top of the stairs. The woman's wrinkled face mapped a lifetime of enthusiasm, curiosity, and intelligence, Carolyn thought to herself. Her eyes were a vibrant shade of blue, and her gaze was keen.
You must be my mystery florist.
The woman pointed to the flowers.
My husband, rest his soul, used to buy me flowers every week. When he passed, I thought that would be the end of my weekly bouquet among so many other wonderful things. A lot of things are gone forever. What can you do? But the flowers keep on coming thanks to you.
Oh, but it wasn't me. Carolyn began, but Jimmy Foss interrupted her.
Accept the thank you on my behalf, would you, Toots? My neighbor, Mrs. Bustante, was married to the late Mr. Bustante for over 50 years. The lady needs love. She doesn't need to know the details.
You're very welcome, Mrs. Bustante, Carolyn told the older woman. It's our pleasure, really.
You're new around here, aren't you? I mean, relatively. I've lived in this building for half a century. That's longer than you've been alive. But now that we've met, I bet we'll be seeing more of each other. And really, thank you again for the flowers. It's a very nice thing to do. And a very old-fashioned thing to do, by the way. My mother always used to say, a good deed sows a seed. It's like an eye for an eye in a good way. Trust me, a kindness like this won't go unrewarded. And now,
Jimmy Foss opened the door to Carolyn's right and waved her into a large and largely empty room. A small metal table and chair stood in the center of it, between 2 large sets of windows. A small computer sat on the table. It's very nice, Carolyn fibbed. The place lacked Jimmy Foss's style. It wasn't loud enough or bold enough. It looked cold, and he was anything but.
You're a terrible liar, Toots. That's okay. I understand your concern. I prefer a bland workplace. It helps me focus on the fine details of my profession without needless visual distractions. But when my workday is done, the scene changes, Toots.
Jimmy Foss waved Carolyn through the doorway of his office into his even larger back room.
This is more like me, you know. Am I right or am I right?
This is... Carolyn was too busy looking around to finish her sentence at first. This is amazing. The back half of Jimmy Foss's apartment was as fantastic as the front was boring. It was like standing in an enchanted forest mixed with a tennis club. Black river rocks wound along the floor between squares of live green grass. A live lemon tree bloomed in one corner. A badminton net divided the room in 2. A little wrought iron table with 2 chairs stood waiting with a pitcher of lemonade on top of it. An enormous skylight took up most of the ceiling, framed by barn red shutters. Bookcases full of record albums lined the back wall.
Here you go.
Jimmy Foss handed Carolyn a glass of lemonade.
And now for a little mood music.
Jimmy Foss pressed a button on the wall by the badminton court. You can blame it on my game, or blame it on the batter. Frank Sinatra filled the room.
It's one of his lesser-known tunes, but it's my favorite.
Did you do all this? Carolyn surveyed the room. Carrying the river rocks up 6 flights of stairs was a Herculean task in itself. Not to mention the wrought iron table and chairs, and then there was the artistry of the place. Jimmy had created an entire world in a room.
When I'm happy, I decorate.
He handed her a badminton racket.
When I'm sad, I move. Right now, however, things are going really well for me. A person could say I've been bitten by the love bug, just like the guy in this song.
You're in love?
Heads up, Toots.
Jimmy served a birdie across the net. Who are you in love with?
That's privileged information, Toots. I don't smite and tell. I'm a professional, remember? You hired me, I need to maintain a certain distance.
This was Jimmy's idea of professional distance. Okay, if we're going to be professional, let's go to work. What does badminton have to do with the second step to love?
Think about it, Toots. Love in the game of life starts with 0. It's your starting score. But the only way you can go from there is up. And having someone return your serve beats the heck out of playing alone. You see what I'm saying?
Jimmy lobbed another birdie across the net. It's a good metaphor, I agree, Carolyn said. But how does it help me with the second step?
We need to update your romantic biography before I can answer that for you. Question 1. Do you like Ned?
Jimmy served Carolyn a birdie. He's a very nice guy, Carolyn said, hitting it back. Did you know he travels a lot for his job?
So that would be a yes?
Yes.
Then you're ready for step 2. You've done something with Ned and you like him. Now you need to expand on the yes. You need to give Ned Allen something that doesn't exist until he takes it.
Well, what does that mean? It sounds like you're reading something on a fortune cookie.
That's an interesting observation, Toots. What do the words mean?
They played several more games of badminton while they listened to Sinatra. Then they retired to the wrought iron table beneath the skylight and polished off a second pitcher of lemonade.
Walk with me, Toots.
Jimmy Foss said when they were finished drinking. He led her downstairs and out the door to the street. They turned right, and then they turned left, into a residential neighborhood. Carolyn could see people going about their nightly routines through the parted curtains of the houses they passed. Some of them were watching television, some of them were yelling into telephones or at each other. Some were cooking dinner. And then they wound back into town, back to the ferry landing.
Everything you just saw was a hint about how to execute the second step to love, by the way. Remember, Toots, you'll need to give Ned something that doesn't exist until you give it to him if you want the second step to work.
I'm sorry, but I still don't understand what you mean, Carolyn said as the ferry pulled up.
You'll figure it out by the next time you see him. What other choice do you have?
Jimmy walked Carolyn to the boat ramp and then he waved goodbye. But he didn't walk away. Carolyn watched him growing smaller as the boat ferried her home. Something that doesn't exist until Ned Allen takes it. The words were easy to say, but Carolyn still didn't know what the words in the second step to love meant, and she was seeing Ned that night.
Think of this like riding a bike, Toots.
Jimmy Fawcett responded when she emailed him for help.
You've had training wheels on until now, but it's time for you to pedal forward on your own.
Carolyn remembered how Jimmy had righted the little girl who almost toppled into the street from her bicycle the other afternoon as they'd been eating pizza outside. But you'll help me if I fall?
Sorry, Toots. You're a grown-up. If you fall, you're gonna go down.
And now, Carolyn was sitting next to Ned in a taxi riding to Times Square.
Is something wrong?
Ned asked.
You look worried.
I'm trying to decode a riddle. Oh, wow. Would you look at this? Times Square was packed with traffic, normally. But tonight, it was full of brightly colored folding chairs. This is why they had come here. Ned's company was hosting a viewing party of a performance in the square. The cab turned and dropped them off down the street from their destination. Right this way, Ned led Carolyn to the building where he worked. It was a new building, all glass and chrome. They rode a sleek steel elevator to the top floor of the building. Carolyn was more accustomed to the creaky motions of the wooden elevators found in old buildings. As the elevator rushed up with her and Ned inside it, she felt like they were riding one of the city's hidden amusement rides. The inside of Ned's office was ultra-modern too. It seemed to be made entirely out of glass. Carolyn felt that she was floating over the city square below them. It could have been unsettling, but the office was designed in a way that made her feel at ease and untethered at the same time.
Show started.
Ned pointed down at the street. The empty folding chairs she'd noticed before were now filled with dancers, dressed in a variety of costumes. Ballet, tango, hip-hop. A drum corps arrived and began to pound out a beat. A couple dressed in ballet garb began to dance on their chairs, creating a beautiful slow duet against the beat. A pair of tango dancers began to dance with their chairs as their partners, weaving between the ballet dancers. A line of hip-hop dancers joined in, accenting the downbeat with their feet. It was salsa. It was a waltz. Everywhere Carolyn looked, Times Square was dancing. And then, in one beautifully choreographed move, the performers lifted their chairs overhead, swung them onto their backs, and spun around, creating a blur of living color. It was abstract at first, but then, to Carolyn's amazement, the performers arranged themselves to create a mosaic portrait of the buildings in Times Square. Down below, the audience cheered and snapped photos, and the party guests above applauded. This is one of those sights you have to see for yourself, Carolyn told Ned, and thanks to you, I have, and what a great idea.
It's funny. When my office manager offered me 2 party passes, I was gonna say, maybe, let me check my schedule, but then I remembered how you said yes when I asked you on this date. There was no maybe about it. You gave me this kind of a second-hand confidence. and I used it to say yes to this party for our second date. I hope that's okay. You see, Toots,
Jimmy Foss said when he called for his nightly recap.
you've taken the second step to love. How about I pick you up after work tomorrow and we can talk about step 3?
Well, tomorrow night was Drink and Think at the Emerald Tavern with Reverend Evans and his friends, and you should know that Drink and Think is a monthly event that Carolyn attends with her very good friend, Reverend Evans, and his 2 best friends, who are a rabbi and a priest, and so a priest, a minister, and a rabbi get to walk into this bar every month, and they talk about life's big issues. She loved this event, she didn't want to miss it. But you know what? Carolyn said to Jimmy Foss, why don't you meet me there? I mean, you could drink a little and think a little, and then we could talk about the third step to love. A little, or a lot. She was thinking back to the strange preparation they had done for the second step to love. It had taken a lot of work, and yet it hadn't. Everything had worked out on some kind of cosmic autopilot. But it had taken a ton of preparation to light the pilot light, hadn't it? Knowing the way Jimmy did things, all of that could change when they started working on step 3. When Jimmy showed up at the Emerald Tavern, the big question of the night was already in play. Reverend Evans, Rabbi Wallace, and Father Ted had taken their regular seats at the big table in the back of the room and were moderating the discussion in their singular way. The question of the night was, how do we do what we do? Rabbi Wallace was asking the Co-Johansons.
And why?
Reverend Evans added. Carolyn was in a happy mood. It was a beautiful spring night, and all her Drink and Think friends were there, plus Jimmy, and that made her think about Sinatra. How do we do? She sang like a crooner when her turn came to ask a question, and the crowd laughed and saluted her. Indeed, said Father Ted.
Last call,
Reverend Evans announced at 10 p.m. sharp. The Drink and Thinkers all said goodbye on the sidewalk outside the tavern.
how do we take the third step to love, Toots?
Jimmy said, taking Carolyn's arm.
How do we?
Thursday night was the start of the weekend downtown, especially in the spring. It was warm enough to head out without a jacket that needed checking, and still cool enough that the city's party people hadn't headed off to the shore. Club goers were lining up behind velvet ropes. People were hopping out of limos and hailing cabs. Inline skaters whirred by.
Now, this looks promising.
Jimmy Foss pointed to a crowd of elegantly dressed people standing on the stairs of a turreted building in the middle of the block. Carolyn gazed past the crowd into the building. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling. A small orchestra was playing. Waiters in tuxedos were weaving through the crowd, handing out champagne.
This is the perfect place to test drive the third step to love. The third step to love, if you recall, is to take something, and you are going to take a leap and become a black tie party guest as elegantly dressed and socially upscale as anybody here.
What? Carolyn was wearing a light blue button-down shirt, a green knee-length cotton skirt embroidered with daisies, penny loafers.
Listen to me, Toots. People are too busy worrying about their own lives to see what's standing right in front of them. Your job tonight is to take control. Show them what they want to see. This is the key to magic tricks. It makes rabbits jump out of top hats, and it's the key to step 3 to love. In this case, it'll make a pretty girl in sensible clothes look like she's Cinderella at the ball. All you have to do is make it happen.
I could get arrested for this.
I doubt it. Embarrassed maybe, but you'll never make magic happen if you don't take the leap.
I hope they see Cinderella and not the rabbit, Carolyn said as she followed Jimmy up the stairs.
Here's your kingdom.
Jimmy pointed to the well-dressed crowd.
What they'll see next is up to you. As for me, I need to hit the head.
I am elegant, Carolyn thought, as she walked across the floor where a jazz guitarist was gently playing a random tune that she could pick right now and just noodle. Is that amazing? What else I can ask for? Oh, why not take the leap to the next level? I'm glamorous. Funny thing was, as she walked across the floor, that's how she began to feel. Glamorous, elegant, like she was dancing on a beautiful pair of strangely comfortable high heels. As she was promenading across the floor in her imaginary stilettos, Carolyn noticed a silver-haired woman standing alone at the back of the room. She was wearing a dress made out of gold silk, and that dress made Carolyn think of ancient Greece. Its design was spare and yet stunning. What a beautiful dress, Carolyn said, walking up to the woman. Who designed it? She was genuinely curious. She'd never dreamed about wearing the clothes she saw in fashion magazines, but this dress, this was different.
I'm so glad you like it. It's Beltram by Beltram. His clothes are so easy to wear, and while I don't usually say this aloud, they're my sneaky way of playing the part of a well-dressed matron with less pain. You see?
The woman pulled on the hem of her dress, which was surprisingly quite elastic.
This dress looks serious, and yet it's as comfortable as a t-shirt. But you don't need a style lecture from me. Your look is so fresh, so young. May I introduce you to some friends of mine? I think they'd enjoy your company.
Carolyn had started out as a party crasher, but suddenly she was the belle of the ball. She chatted with a count and a countess, a professional socialite, and a recreational rose gardener.
A tour guide.
The professional socialite said.
Perhaps you could take me on a tour of one of my houses.
Your houses?
I inherited 3 in the last year, all fully appointed.
The woman waved her serially beringed right hand.
If I could just find the time to see them. Excuse me, Toots. You mind if I cut in?
Jimmy Foss reached out his hand. A chamber orchestra at the back of the room was playing a waltz with a familiar sounding melody.
You can blame it on the game, blame it on the bow.
He sang in her ear as they danced out the door and back into the night.
You can blame it on Hoboken, but baby, stay with me.
A few days later, Carolyn tried to take the third step to love with Ned Allen at her favorite party of the year, the Botanic Gardens annual scavenger hunt and benefit. Aggie's boyfriend, Tim, was the Botanic Gardens head arborist. The scavenger hunt was a party with a double purpose. Teams paid to enter, and that helped to raise funds, and the players got to help the grounds crew do some necessary maintenance work as they worked their way through their clues. Aggie and Carolyn were both competitive players.
Hey, Carol, hey, Ned.
Aggie called as they took their places on the lawn.
Are you two ready to crumble beneath our team's scavenging majesty?
We're gonna compost your majesty, Carolyn called to her best friend.
Ready?
The
Go!
huntmaster called, and off they went to their first assignment in an untilled flower bed. Each team had to sow 5 rows of seeds before they could pick up their next clue.
I got this.
Ned told Carolyn as he tilled the soil.
My family are pretty passionate gardeners.
Carolyn deciphered the next clue. She and Ned needed to remove 6 pieces of trash from the meadow which bordered the highway. Catch! Carolyn tossed a balled up piece of newspaper to Ned. She looked at the sky as she tossed it, and she noticed a small plane flying overhead.
You gotta make the leap if you want to make a change.
She heard Jimmy Voss's voice saying, "Hey, Ned!" Carolyn pointed to the aircraft. "Try to touch the plane." She reached for the camera she brought with her.
But why?
"Oh, I'll tell you later. Trust me. Jump!" Ned leaped into the air with hands outstretched. Carolyn snapped a picture. The image was perfect. "You see," Carolyn said, "you made the leap and you caught the plane." And in the photograph, Ned seemed to be holding the plane in his hands. The final step of the scavenger hunt was a barbecue on the lawn. Aggie's and Carolyn's team tied for 3rd place.
Want to walk with me to the kissing tree?
Carolyn heard Aggie ask Tim as they finished their dessert.
There's no such thing as a kissing tree.
Tim said.
There will be if you take a walk with me.
Aggie went. And off they went.
A kissing tree, huh? I'd like to plant one of those someday.
Oh, Ned was going to make a move. Carolyn could feel it. She leaned in for the kiss.
I know it's early, but I should move on.
Ned leaned back.
I'm traveling for work tomorrow, but I'll be home by the weekend, so maybe we can get together then?
Where did I go wrong? Carolyn asked Jimmy Foss when he called her later that night. I made him take the lead, and then it was time for him to make his move, right?
And he did make his move, Toots.
But he moved backwards.
And this surprises you why exactly? Look, Toots, you took step 3. You're doing fine.
Really? Well, gosh, that's a relief. I mean, so what do I do next?
Do something fun. Give yourself a break, Toots. Honestly, I could use one too.
And speaking of a break, then we'll take a 2-minute pause at this point in our presentation. Andre will do the raffling of the BLAME IT ON HOBOKEN EP. Very exciting. I want to tell you about Laurie's presentations, and I have your card, but maybe you want, I have them. What can I do? If you don't know about Laurie's work, is a multimedia environmental presentation. There is a card on your table. These are ongoing, yeah?
Yeah. All the events are listed on that Facebook page listed on the background.
So you can get a combination of education and
Let me mention though that the next one is next Friday, the Phoenix Asylum, and they're doing a whole upscaling artist event, upscaling art. And so there'll be some artists there, and a special guest speaker, Harry Hempy, will be there too, next Friday.
Cool. And what is upscaling? I'm downscaling.
Well, they take art, or they take anything and reuse it and make it into art. It's, yeah.
And Emily K. Harrison, what are you up to coming up? You just did a tremendous amount.
The next show that I have happening is a collaboration that my theater company's doing with Bunkworth Theater down in Denver, and that opens May 30th.
And the title of your show?
Peggy Joe and the Desolate Nothing.
Ooh,
It's a true story, mostly true story of a bank robber in Texas who robbed bank after bank after bank. It's pretty awesome.
Cool. Does it have a happy ending?
It's a comedy.
Is it really?
It is mostly.
I like the comic. Yeah, I love that. Well, very cool. Should we play one more tune while we wait for Andre to do his thing? And then, what is it? Yeah, what was that one? Let's see. Yeah.
I've got a million friends, and my life's been good. But when it comes to romance, I've never been understood. Except that I'm really lonely, but I'm still watching out for that one and only. I can't wait to see you again. I get the feeling we'll be more than friends. Oh, how I missed you. I should have kissed you. Can't wait to see you again. I get so nervous looking in your eyes. Oh, my feelings I just can't describe. Oh, how I'm falling, how you have come. Can't wait to look in your eyes. I've been waiting oh so long. I've been waiting to write this song. I only hope that I'm not wrong, that this love is worth the waiting. I can't wait to see you again. Haven't felt like this since I don't know when. Oh, how I shiver, you make me cry. Can't wait to see you again. Oh, so long. I've been waiting to write this song. I've been hoping that I'm not wrong, that this love is worth the waiting. I can't wait to see you again. I've felt like this since I don't know when. Oh, how I shiver, you make me cry. Can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to see you again. Can't wait to see you again.
And now for the dramatic announcement that we've all been waiting for. Andre, have you picked a name? Here's the prize.
I think someone who didn't handle the
All right.
should.
How about Emily K. Harrison of the Square Product? Yes, well, because Laurie has guitar.
All right.
And also, That's drum. Another drum.
Jen Marshall.
Jen Marshall! Congratulations, you have won an official Blame It on Hoboken EP. It's actually fairly stunning. It's produced by Eric Tureen out of Alliance with some fabulous musicians from Denver. And Paul Kiddick on guitar and mandolin. Yes, that's strange.
That's what you said, right?
Yes, good fiddle guitar, and mandolin. So we're going to wrap up our episode. And does anyone have any pressing questions that we can answer plot-wise, or you doing okay? Do you have any questions? You're okay. I'm Jewish. I have to make sure everyone take care of everybody. Okay. So let's see. Something fun. The next morning, Carolyn went back to her local flea market. Went to it. She was trying to follow Jimmy's orders to take a break, but not doing something, it was making her nervous. Time was running out, and she was only halfway through the 5 Steps to Love with Ned. Before she left her apartment, she popped Aggie's mirror into her bag for good luck.
You gotta leave,
the mirror said, and so she did. Well, I mean, at least she was trying. Carolyn wandered down the middle aisle of the flea market. The first aisle had been a bust, and this one wasn't much better. There were some old canning jars and some broken pottery, and then she saw what she'd been looking for. Well, okay, she hadn't been looking for it, but it was something she needed. A blue tandem bicycle. Jimmy Foss was right again. She filled the bike's tires at a nearby gas station and rode it to the ferry.
To what do I owe this honor?
Jimmy Foss asked when she rang the doorbell to his apartment. Ooh, come down and see, she said. Carolyn and Jimmy pedaled off together through the streets of Hoboken. They rode around for an hour, taking in the sights, with no real destination in mind. And then they bought a pint of ice cream at a deli and ate it sitting by the water.
I haven't ridden a bike in forever, Toots. I gotta hand it to you. This was a good idea.
Hey, you should sit up front on the way back.
Oh, we're gonna get some funny looks if we do that.
He was right. I mean, to the world at large, because remember, only Carolyn could see Jimmy, Carolyn would appear to be riding the 2-person bicycle with no hands from the back seat. Oh, that's fine with me. A crowd of weekend shoppers turned to stare as Carolyn and Jimmy biked back through town with her in the back seat and no one, seemingly, in front.
You go, girl!
A young boy called to Carolyn.
Riding from the back like that, hands free.
They arrived back at Jimmy's building as the sun was going down.
Toots, that was the nicest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time. And it's a very handsome bike.
It's yours. It's the least I can do to say thank you.
I'm still gonna charge you for the matchmaking.
Oh, that's fine. Although we never really discussed how much you're going to charge me. How much is that?
That beats me, Toots.
Jimmy Foss wheeled the bike towards his front door.
You're not done yet.
Carolyn took the ferry home. Normally she'd walk home from there, but she hadn't been on a bicycle in a very long time and her legs were aching. So she hailed a cab from the queue waiting on the service road by the dock. She sighed as she slid into the back seat of the taxi.
Congratulations, young lady.
The driver said as he steered the car onto the highway. Oh, thank you, Carolyn said automatically, but what are you congratulating me for?
I am congratulating you because the sigh you sighed when you entered my car, the one you just made again, this is the best kind of sigh there is. I can tell you this with great certainty because I, Katan Takan, am an expert in psychology as well as a taxi driver.
You're a psychologist? Carolyn leaned forward. She'd heard of psychologists, of course, and she'd read about Scientologists. Was psychology related to those things somehow?
Psychology is the science of sighs. Many people think of a sigh as a simple exhalation of air, but to the properly trained ear, each sigh conveys a message all its own. For example, there is a sigh that I call the Camus. It is the classic sigh of, why? I hear the Camus from my passengers on holiday weekends and family occasions. There is a sigh that I call the yak. It is also known as the drinker's sigh. Rarest and most valuable of all is the sigh I call the miracle sigh. It is the unmistakable sound of a person who has found love with a capital L, the kind that lasts. The way you sighed just now confirms it. You have found that kind of love. Your miracle sigh proves it.
Oh, that's good to hear because I've been taking these steps toward love and this makes it sound like I'm on the right track.
You're not only on the right track, you have arrived. Now all you need to do is find the flaw.
The flaw?
Every great love has one.
Catan flipped down his car's sun visor. Photographs of smiling couples were taped to its underside.
Each of these couples owe their happiness to their true love's flaw.
Catan pointed to the photograph of a man and a woman
You see
seated on
that?
butts. Carolyn shook her head.
Look again.
On second glance, Carolyn noticed the woman in the photograph was wearing 2 pairs of sunglasses. One was perched on top of her head, and the other one dangled from a chain around her neck.
It's only fitting that you look twice. The lovely lady in this photograph does everything twice, and the man she loves the flaw as part of her.
Catan pointed to a picture of a couple standing in a bookstore. The man in the photograph was partly out of the frame.
This gentleman says hello to everyone, everywhere he goes. His habit could have driven his true love crazy, but it didn't, because she knew about his flaw, and in doing so, she could embrace it. Hold on!
Catan swerved to avoid an oncoming car that was trying to pass a bicycle in the opposite lane. The visor snapped closed, and the photographs of his flawed couples disappeared from view. But his point was clear to Carolyn. So the miracle side tells you someone has found true love, but it's up to them to find their true love's flaw if they want that love to last?
The key is run toward the flaw, to embrace it with an open heart and mind. My wife is a chronic rearranger. Last year, she moved the front door of our house to the back. Was I happy about this? Not really. But this lovely woman of whom I speak shifted our first date 4 times. She changed our wedding date 8 times. Does this irk me? Somewhat. But she is my wife, and rearranging is her flaw.
Catan stopped his cab in front of Carolyn's apartment building.
Do they make good, strong coffee here?
He pointed across the street to La Marisa, the diner. Very, Carolyn said.
This is a fortunate find indeed. Our garage sits due west of here by the highway. Size and caffeine are the tools of my trade. Goodbye, my miracle sire.
Catan said as Carolyn paid the fare. Now they're across the street at the diner, which we can take you to. Nico and Grimelda are the owners of the diner. They are a curmudgeonly pair from Corsica. Say that 3 times fast. Chapter 8.
Some fresh hot cafe for you.
Nico placed a fresh cup of coffee on the table in front of Carolyn.
Hey, Carol.
Aggie's voice echoed through La Marisa.
Wait till you see what the postman brought me.
Ding! Grimelda rang her bell. One of La Marisa's unwritten rules was no yelling across the dining area.
Look at this. Is this the most beautiful, official-looking thing you've ever seen?
Aggie was holding a certified letter. The Whole Beans Gallery, the city's top gallery for new talent, had announced its list of finalists for its fall season of one-person exhibits. 50 artists had been considered by a secret committee known around town as the Star Makers. That's how big a show at the Whole Beans was. A person could go from being an up-and-comer to an internationally recognized artist in days, even hours. 3 artists were still in consideration, the letter said. Their names were
blah, 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 and whatchamacallit, and me.
Aggie said, jumping up and down beside Carolyn's seat.
They're looking at me for a solo show, Carol. Do you know what this means? A solo show at the Whole Beans is like winning the Nobel Prize. I wanted this for so long, and now it's happening. Can you believe it? Thanks, Nico.
Aggie said, sliding into her side of the booth and accepting a cup of coffee from the wistful-looking waiter.
Her eyes are like storm clouds over a roiling sea.
Nico thought in his native tongue of poetry and passion and romance.
They are darkness, they are light, they are...
Ding! Nico returned, bereft for now, to his duties. I'm so happy for you, Ag, but honestly, I'm not surprised. As a good friend of mine once said, you gotta believe.
And guess what, Carol? It's gonna be the theme of the show. I'm proposing to the Whole Beans, you gotta believe. Talk about a message for troubled times, not to mention a kick-ass piece of art. I'm gonna put a photograph of the mirror on the first page of my portfolio. Can I borrow it for a day? I'll give it back. I just need it long enough to photograph it.
Carolyn reached into her bag, but the mirror that Aggie had made for her, the one that said you gotta believe, it wasn't there. Her heart sunk. Where had she used it last? Phew. Jimmy Foss had used it to flash rainbows on unsuspecting surfaces as they'd ridden around town on their tandem bike.
You didn't lose it, did you?
No, it's at a friend's house. I'll pick it up today after work and get it to you tomorrow. Well, the rest of the day buzzed by in a particularly busy way. Carolyn led a tour of overlooked clubs and hearts, landmarks for a local bridge club in the morning. and she treated a group of librarians to the story of Enid Hobbs' grave and its arrow hearts in the afternoon. And then she went to Hoboken to pick up her mirror for Jimmy Foss. She rang the buzzer to Jimmy's apartment. He buzzed her in. She raced up all 6 flights of stairs. She told him she was only dropping in for a moment. But when Jimmy opened the door, Carolyn took one look at his nose, the nose he'd stuck in so many places that didn't belong, the nose that had gotten its fair or unfair share of hard knocks over the years, just like its owner. She took one look at Jimmy's beautifully flawed nose and Blame It on Hoboken. She kissed him. They kissed their way through his unadorned office into the beautiful back room of his apartment, the one with the grass carpet and the lemon tree and a bed that felt as tall as a skyscraper and as deep as the ocean. As she wrapped her arms around Jimmy Foss, Carolyn saw her reflection smiling in Aggie's mirror, which was sitting on the night table beside Jimmy's bed.
Gotta believe,
The mirror said.
Rise and shine, Toots.
Carolyn opened her eyes. Sun was pouring down from the skylight. The air smelled like fresh lemons. She stretched, rolled over, and caught a glimpse of her reflection looking at Jimmy's bedside alarm clock. No! She screamed and jumped out of bed.
What's the rush, Toots?
It's 7 a.m. It's 7 a.m. It was 7 a.m. and Carolyn's Sinatra post office tour for Banque Suisse, her most important client ever, was starting in 30 minutes.
Look on the bright side. That gives you 3.5 minutes to eat and shower. Could be worse. Can I give you some good advice?
Jimmy said as Carolyn raced out the door with wet hair and a half a bagel in her hand.
Don't worry about last night. What happens in Hoboken stays in Hoboken.
Carolyn prepared herself. Yeah.
Don't forget your mirror, Toots.
Jimmy Foss said. Chapter 9, the post office. Guten Morgen, bonjour, good morning, bienvenue Banque Suisse. By some combination of luck, timing, and aerobic conditioning, Carolyn Cates made it to the Hoboken post office a few steps ahead of her group from Banque Suisse. Today's ceremony would be taking place in the main lobby of the post office, but that was closed to the public for now, while the officials in charge of today's ceremony finished up some last-minute official pre-ceremonial things. Carolyn ad-libbed to them. In the meantime, she and the group, a dozen executive trainees from around the world, killed time with about 100 other guests in the building's outer lobby. Now, this wasn't as dull as it sounds. The lobby of the post office had been transformed into an ad hoc Sinatra museum dedicated to local artist portraits of Frank in a wide array of media. There were sketches for proposed Sinatra stamps, hook rug wall hangings of Frank through the years, paintings of album covers from his Blue Note years. Carolyn would have found this work fascinating normally. Who were these people? And what was it about Frank Sinatra that made them want to paint him and weave hook rugs of his face? But her heart was beating too fast for her to concentrate on the folk art in front of her. She'd never been late for a tour. She could have ruined everything today by not setting Jimmy's alarm. I mean, her reputation, her record for timeliness. And who was she kidding? Her professional on-time record was the least of her problems. She'd slept with her matchmaker. Could a person get more unprofessional than that?
Ladies and gentlemen,
A voice called from the overhead PA system.
please take your seats.
Carolyn led her group to a block of seats in the second row, just behind a group of local dignitaries. The rows were raked, giving them a perfect view of the stage before them, which was draped in red, white, and blue bunting. An easel stood stage right, covered in bright blue velvet.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The voice on the overhead PA announced.
please welcome the Honorable Mayor of Hoboken.
Yay!
Woo!
Get out of here, you bum! Jersey politics being what they were, about half the crowd were huge fans of the mayor, while the other half thought she should get out of town before she drove the whole state to the drink with her cockamamie ways. And that was putting it mildly.
Good morning, Hoboken.
The
We
mayor.
are gathered together today to celebrate one of our greatest treasures. The Frank Sinatra Post Office will pay tribute to the past. It will be a landmark of the future that is our part of every day.
Now, Carolyn wasn't up to speed on Jersey politics, but she felt really bad for the mayor. The woman deserved a better speechwriter. Apparently, her tour group felt the same way.
It is everywhere the same speech, yes?
One of the young bankers whispered to his neighbor.
So many words to say so little.
Why, it might sound better in French, the other banker said.
But you do not speak French.
Precisely. Carolyn was getting nervous. She promised her client, the bank vice president, that she would wow his new hires. But if things went on this way, she'd be putting them to sleep. This was not the way she had planned today. I mean, not at all. She thought back to Jimmy Foss's bedroom. She could smell the lemons and feel the sheets and...
And now, ladies and gentlemen,
The announcer said.
we are pleased to present one of Hoboken's treasures, the man committed to the legacy of our favorite son. Please join us in welcoming the Friends of Frank.
And just like that, everything changed in a good way. The Franks took the stage one after another, starting with the youngest Frank and concluding with the chairman of the board.
So many Sinatras.
One of the young bankers exclaimed. This is wonderfully different, another enthused. They sounded thrilled to be there, and she shared their enthusiasm. There was something about the music. The orchestra had come along with the Friend of Frank's band, and the grand old great building that made you forget your troubles and feel like you were in a nightclub, soaring with the melody while the morning sun was outside shining. When the Franks finished their set, the chairman of the board unveiled the plaque that would formally announce the new post office's name. The bankers cheered along with the rest of the crowd as the Hoboken post office was transformed into the Francis Albert Sinatra Postal Facility.
You have done a wonderful job with a difficult assignment in a very demanding audience.
The vice president of Banque Suisse told Carolyn when the show was over.
We look forward to working with you again soon.
The bankers headed back to work. Carolyn went home. She'd done a great job under the circumstances. Given a second chance, she told herself, she would have performed the tour perfectly. And here's an original song that echoes that feeling as Carolyn rides the ferry home. A mulligan, I want a mulligan, a chance to call again. I want a mulligan, mulligan, let life be dull again, for the glass full again. I want a mulligan. I want the second chance that Adam missed. I want to run the race and not be kissed and kissed again. I want a mulligan. Mulligan, I want a mulligan, travel like Sullivan. I want a mulligan, mulligan, let life be dull again, be short or tall again. I want a mulligan. I wanna do over and do it again, to not know how and not care when. I wanna take it, not take it, mistake it, remake it, and then I want a mulligan. I want a mulligan. I won't change a thing, not even the mulligan. Carolyn slipped her key into the lock of her apartment door. She promised herself she'd take the rest of the day off. She turned the key, but the door to her apartment was unlocked. This could only mean one thing. I've been robbed, Carolyn thought as she pushed the door open. But she was wrong. All of her belongings were in their usual place. That was a huge relief. And there was an extremely handsome stranger sleeping on her couch. Tune with us, in with us next month, May 11th, at Still Cellars in Longmont at 3 o'clock to find out who is that handsome stranger and more questions from Blame It on Hoboken. Thank you so much to special guest Laurie Dameron, who performances on her website, and Emily K. Harrison's for Product Theater. We'll see you next month with more jollity frivolity. See Andre about perhaps purchasing the brand new, unbelievable limited edition flip book of Hoboken, lovingly handcrafted and printed in Colorado, and or CD, or talk to me about bringing this event to where you live or work, or teach, or we'll play our little song out, and then we're out of here, I think. Thank you to Paul Kidden for beautiful sound, and beautiful fiddle and mandolin and non-guitar playing on the EP. You could have if you wanted to. Blame it on the season, blame it on the weather, oh, blame it for no reason. On a feather, you can blame it on Hoboken. Baby, stay with me. Blame it on the game, blame it on the batter, oh, blame it on my name. It doesn't matter, you can blame it on Hoboken. But baby, stay with me. Magic kicks off Saturday night when your ferry pulls in from Brooklyn Heights. The gang planks down, the love bug bites. The sky spells forever as long as we're together. You can blame it on a fish, blame it on the ocean, oh, blame it on this kiss. If you get the notion, you can blame it on Hoboken. But baby, stay with me. Kicks off Saturday night when your ferry pulls in from Brooklyn Heights. The gang planks down, the love bug bites. Oh, the sky that spells forever as long as we're together. You can blame it on a fish, blame it on the ocean, oh, blame it on a kiss. If you get the notion, you can blame it on Hoboken. But baby, stay with, blame it on Hoboken. But baby, stay with, blame it, but don't tame it. Write our name and flame with it. No 2 days the same on it. Stake a claim for fame on it.